All right, it's 8:30. I believe in being punctual. I was so about being on time. I was born early. Good evening, y'all. Thanks for coming by, hanging out with us. Just so you're aware, the title is what you're going to get in the box. It is a 101 panel. If you are already about that diversity life, then you're going to get some tips and tricks and things to take back to your friends that you might need to have that come to Jesus moment with. And I'm sure we all have that friend where you're like, ooh, you just tweeted that, you said that, you shared that article. I don't know about you anymore. So I've done this panel before at PAX Dev and at PAX West last year, I can say that now, and a few other places. So just this is what today's panel is. I'm not going to read at you because I've been in more than enough presentations where people literally read slides at me and I fell asleep. I'm not going to do that to you. We're going to go through, we're going to introduce ourselves, and we're also going to have a Q is for question. There's no C in question. If you have a comment, hang on to it till we're done, and we can chat with you a bit after the panel. Otherwise, if you have a deep, deep burning comment, keep it to yourself. Do not yell. Do not jump out of your seat. Do not overtalk anyone, especially anyone on this panel that I've asked to spend their time having this conversation. So I've been in a lot of panels where people have done that, and it's incredibly rude. And I'm 44, and I will bring out mom voice, although I have not one child. So everyone can introduce themselves, and I'll go last. AJ, would you like to start?
Absolutely. So I'm AJ Ryan. I currently work as an accessibility web analyst at Level Access. I've done a lot of game development work on various games for mobile, Xbox, and PC. And I also play video games with my feet and see games in a different light because of that. So I always try to make sure my games are accessible to everyone because I know I wish they did the same for me.
Yes, you.
All right. Hi, my name is Rochelle Bazelay.
You stole my thunder.
Did I?
No.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
This is why they're not sitting together.
Anyway, my name is Rochelle Bazelay. I'm a game designer and game programmer. I also run a podcast called the Game Seriously Podcast, and I am an advocate for diversity and inclusion in tech and video games.
Hi, I'm Alex Abukaram. I'm the community manager at Roll20, a virtual tabletop company. So if you really like, being a nerd and playing D&D with your friends, but they're far away, you should probably use that. Am I allowed to say that?
Yes.
I mean, I say that completely unbiased. I'm also an artist and game developer, and I basically deal with issues of abuse and harassment and moderating all that good, awful stuff on a daily basis. It's good to be here.
And I'm your moderator, Tanya DePass. If you've seen A Cipher of Tear online, that's me. I run my mouth a lot on the internet about diversity and inclusion. I actually run a nonprofit called I Need Diverse Games. So if you've been on Twitter for a few years and you saw that hashtag, that was me being angry about video games at 6 in the morning. And now it's a nonprofit, and that's what I do for a living. So I do this kind of stuff. But I also podcast with Spawn on Me, long-running podcast, and I just joined it in 2017. Sorry, it took me a minute because I'm still adjusting to saying 2018 like most people. And I actually am also a partner Twitch streamer, and I do a variety of stuff, gaming, some creative stuff. So this is what I do for a living. All right, so like I said, this panel is a 101 panel. So if you're someone, especially for the people of color in the audience, you probably have had those uncomfortable conversations with your white and non-black POC friends, or want to have those uncomfortable conversations when they share stupid things online. And I am going to cuss a lot in this panel because usually my Twitter feed is these conversations, and I cuss a lot on Twitter and in real life. So you're probably thinking, well, I know about diversity, et cetera. But again, if not for yourself, you may want to take some tools and tips back to friends that need to have that unhappy and often uncomfortable discussion. So this is what we mean by diversity. You know, I would like to pick up a game with someone who looks like me, and it is not a fight on the internet, across Reddit, across Tumblr. You know, people going, well, why do you have to shove your politics in my face? Well, because like 99.9% of all the other fucking games that came out have a white dude as lead. Maybe, just that's a reason. Other thoughts on what we could mean by diversity before we move on?
I would definitely say diversity is just any way you view a game, any way you have a different experience with a game. So whether you're playing a game differently because of a disability or you're viewing it because you're not the normal white dude, like, it's just, if you're playing a game in a different way, I think you qualify for diversity with that.
I would say diversity is also about making sure that there are different voices on these platforms. Like, yes, like I said, we've had like the 1,000,001 white guy protagonist, but I, for one, get very excited when I can play someone who has the same skin tone as me. At the same time, that's not where it stops. And in a color palette switch won't really, actually save your game and call it diverse.
Cool. So the bigger question is why we need diversity in our games. And also, by diversity, we also mean inclusion. Because diversity gets bandied around, it's become a buzzword. A lot of people go, they make that face, that kind of I sucked on a lemon face when you say diversity in some circles. But there's also inclusion. You have to not just say, oh, we want to do better, we want to have more brown folks, queer folks, women, disabled folks, neurodivergent, fill in the list of people that are not being served by gaming. You have to include them. That means, people like Rochelle and Alex and AJ, bringing them to the table, having them involved in development, in critique, and listening to when they have that critique. Or, having a diversity consultant if you don't have someone in that role on your team. And also questioning, why is your team a bunch of same bearded white dudes that we all went to college together? How come we have not hired anyone we don't actually know?
Because I don't see color. I see people.
Be glad I like you, Alex. But this is what we get all the time. This is what we get. I don't see color. Why do you have to bring race into it? And that, fine folks in the audience, is when you have to deal with your privilege, because you have the privilege not to see race. You have the privilege not to have to think about the fact that, a lot of games don't have people that look like you if you're not a cis, straight, white, able-bodied person as a lead or in the game or as a main character. Often women who look like me and Rochelle, if we're in the game at all, we often don't live to the end of the game. We're cannon fodder, we're, fridged early, we're the source for man pain, or we go the other direction with stereotypes and tropes. So just, the next couple slides are kind of stat heavy because I believe coming armed with facts and statistics. So, feel free to take photos of it, or if you want a copy of the deck in PDF form, find me after the panel and I'm happy to share that with you. But I know why I want to see diversity in games, since I'm mod and I've talked a lot. I want to know why all of you think that we need diversity and inclusion in games before we move on.
I personally kind of got tired of being on the other side of the rifle as an Arab and Middle Eastern person. So I come from a background where I didn't actually realize that all of the racist caricature of terrorists in the games were supposed to look like me, because they don't look like anyone from where I'm from. Like, the whole, I don't know, and it's not even like one particular culture, it's just like a mishmash. So I guess I want to see diversity, because it'd be nice to be like the one, if I have to point a gun, it'd be nice to point it at just not someone who's supposed to be a stand-in for me and my people.
Yeah, and you gave a really good talk about that.
Oh God, I had so much to say about that, and then 2017 happened.
Well, yeah. But
God.
Alex gave a really good talk about make me stop killing myself, about that aspect of failed representation. AJ, did you have thoughts? Because I know that one failing I have is often thinking about including disability and ability in some of the conversations that I have.
Yeah, so definitely it does get left out of diversity conversations sometimes, and it's getting included more, and it's awesome it's included here. But I would definitely like disability to be included in more conversation about diversity. And then along with that, I feel like in gaming we kind of have two different fights, because there's the issue of games not being accessible to us, and then there's also kind of the issue of like people with disabilities not really being any character in games at all. And the very few instances where that happens, they're generally, I mean, stereotyped or killed or augmented or something like that. And it's just, I really feel like I'm almost fighting two battles all the time, both making games accessible and getting more people with disabilities in games as characters.
Rochelle, do you have anything?
Yeah. Aside from all the great points that my co-panelists have put forward, it's also about like telling different stories. Like, we've all played the same game several times over, right? We want to have more voices included, not just more voices, but more well-rounded characters. Like, there's a black woman in your game, and she's not like comic relief. That's a good thing, right? As well as like just making more full content, right? And everyone here is, you know, not a flat character. Everybody here has personality. Everybody here has flaws and things that they love about themselves and that they love to show to other people, and your character should reflect that in your games. Yeah.
And these are just some stats, and these are readily available. They're not hidden behind a paywall. You don't have to be in the game industry to get them. The ESA and Pew Research often does a lot of studies and things like this. So I did look for ESA updates. I didn't grab anything that was a little more current. This is from 2016. I could not find a 2017 report out yet. But these are just some numbers. So again, the gaming industry and the gaming audience is not strictly the 18 to 35-year-old white dude that a lot of people still treat it as. The industry is actually, the industry is not serving people like me in their 40s who has disposable income, who gives them a lot of money over the course of a year. And I'm not buying it for a kid or a spouse or a partner. These games are mine, and you cannot touch them if you come to my house. But, you know, there's this idea that they're not thinking about that consumer base. They're just thinking of, you know, putting, you know, a gun and titties in your face, and here's your $60 game. So we're not serving the people that are playing the games and would like other stories. Because much as I love RPGs, I'm sick to death of medieval England. I would like to get out of England, and I would like a reason for there to be brown people and not have it be justified by historical accuracy, because there's dragons, you know, elves, dwarves, but no brown folks. That's a whole other panel that I do elsewhere. I'm not going to read these at you. I just kind of have them up while we talk. So are there other thoughts that you all have about either the stats or kind of the areas the industry is not serving, and the ways in which we talk about diversity and inclusion? Because again, we're a spectrum of people that are gamers, are part of the industry, but we're not being considered in marketing in who's the protagonist, who's the lead. And think about E3 and other gaming award shows. Do you see people who look like us on stage other than Aisha Tyler? I love Aisha Tyler. I'm glad she's out there, you know, and I bought Rainbow Six because of her, but she cannot be the only black woman out there that they can bring out on stage at E3 every year. So, thoughts while we
This
kind of
year
flip
we
through
got
stats?
fuck you the Oscars, man.
Yeah.
He's Middle Eastern.
Okay.
Sorry. On topic, I think it's just, yeah, you're really getting to the meat of it all, is that the industry reflects the people who make these games, and predominantly it's the studios are just white male, and I think they average out around 35 now.
Mm-hmm.
Like the old guard is just now kind of grandfathered in, and it's about kind of like shaking that loose so you can slot in that diversity hire who has to work twice, if not 3 times as hard to get a chance at that spot, who doesn't have the same connections because they weren't in the same frat. I don't know, do nerds have frats? I'm not American, I have no idea how this works. So yeah, it's really this whole idea of like the people who are making the games are the ones setting the tone for the marketing. And if you hire your bro to make your marketing for the game about you, except in space, like white guy, but in space that you created, or white guy, but in medieval times killing something that you created, then of course your bro is gonna just assume that you're marketing to people that look like you or them. It just kind of makes sense. And when you're not forced to look outside your world, you generally won't. That's just, the human condition, living under capitalism, just every day having to just worry about surviving. Plus now, again, 2017, that was a mess. A lot of trauma in 2017. So it's just, there's so much to do that once you get to the whole diversity issue, if you're not impacted by it, if you have that privilege to look away, it's really easy to just look away. And what we want to do is, honestly, if I could just fill all these seats with white folks, that would be great, because they need to hear this. Y'all already know, and you're basically the first wave that will just go out there, and you already do it probably every day. If you're queer, if you're black, if you're brown, if you're disabled, anything, if you have any sort of marginalization and you don't see yourself in this industry, you already have that burden when someone fucks up or says something insensitive, you have to make that choice. Do I bring it up and then it's a thing? Do I talk to Gary at work who won't shut up about my hair? Or do I let it go? So there is an emotional toll on just having these conversations, which is why, Tanya, you do the work of going to these companies and sitting these people down. And even then, I feel like most of the people who show up, if it's not mandatory, would be the more diverse, the women in the company. But yeah, what we've been trying to do is take these conversations to the companies where we work. And honestly, I really appreciate you all being here, because if you work in gaming or if you don't, you might affect someone who does, and you might be able to affect that change, because honestly what I've seen is that it only happens when someone on the inside shakes things up, and that comes with a price. So I guess thank you for being here and making that change.
Give yourselves applause.
Yeah.
Come on, don't be shy. This room's almost full. I know it's late. Come on, y'all. So I'm not gonna read stats you. I failed stats 5 times in college. Seriously, I did. I almost didn't graduate. But I do, now I kind of have a fondness for stats, because I can go, look, numbers, and tell people to give me money and give other people money and do better.
Is that how that works?
Evidence,
Yeah.
stats. That's
I've been
right.
doing it wrong.
Throw facts at
Stats
'em.
are actually useful. Who knew? But this is actually from the International Game Developers Association Developer Satisfaction Survey, and they do a diversity survey as well every year. So these are 2015 figures. I could not find 2016 figures or 2017. But again, they put a PDF out every year. It is not, hard to find. And I would say, just a show of hands, who here is involved in the industry in some way, either critiquing or making games? Wow, I'm really impressed, because a lot of times I get people who come to this panel that are in the industry and basically want free consultation. So thank you again for being here. But these are the things, and I included this slide because I found it interesting that white men were 75% of people that want diversity in games, but we're not really seeing that in the final product, unless the team itself, and the team that you get to meet and has the publicity tour, et cetera, is actually diverse. Because, 2016, there were 3 AAA games that had a non-white lead. And I think there were, over a couple hundred that came out in 2016?
Wait, for real? 3?
Mafia 3,
Mhm.
Watch Dogs 2,
Mhm.
and Battlefield 1. Which, it's a if.
Battlefield 1?
It's a if, because they use the Harlem Hellfighters in promotion, but it's a FPS. You don't really see yourself.
Okay, yeah.
So 2.5.
Okay, 2.5.
And then AJ, I'm sure there's probably not a lot of games that could easily reference that have a disabled protagonist or a lead character.
No, I think the new game Hellblade definitely does,
Mhm.
but other than that, it's really a hard no, unfortunately.
Yeah, and Hellblade deals more with mental health than physical disability. And this would be a place where I would give Wolfenstein kind of a slap on the wrist.
I was going to say that, yeah.
Yeah, because who here's played Wolfenstein 2? Okay, so minor spoiler, but your character's fucked up physically, and he starts the game in a wheelchair. He's in a U-boat, in a manual wheelchair. He's shooting a gun with one hand. So I don't know a lot about guns, but there's some kickback when you use a gun, and he's just rolling around this U-boat downstairs, down conveyor belts, and has no limitations. That's a little weird. And friends I know that are in wheelchairs and have mobility issues took, umbrage to it, rightfully so. And even I was kind of weirded out. I'm like, this makes no sense, because I don't think a wheelchair would have even fit through a U-boat back then. But I don't know how much of a semantic argument that is. But let's move on, because I will get caught up in semantics about Wolfenstein 2, and that'll be the end of the panel. So yes, there is a problem. Just, looking at the numbers of, population versus who's gaming. And again, this is self-reported data, so take that with a grain of salt. I am not a statistician, as we know, because me and stats. So number-wise, there is a problem, because 75% of people in the industry making these games are white dudes. Other and Pacific Islander, barely rated 1%. Black, African American, whichever identifier you use, 3%. You know how many people make video games? Like, there's teams of hundreds of people who make one damn game, and there's 3% total across the industry that responded to this survey. So, do any of you have thoughts on kind of the numbers here? Does it surprise you, not surprise you? Yes, no?
I'm surprised Arabic and West Asian are the same thing.
I didn't write the survey.
No, I'm actually, I don't know what West Asia means, so it's weird.
That's interesting. I thought like as soon as I saw this data, it was more like, okay, so this panel is the most diversity you're gonna see in any capacity in terms of like, if this was a team, this is lucky. Right here. Like, most of the time, you probably won't even see another person that looks like you. You're probably the token person on the team, and that's an issue. That's something that can be systemically worked through and improved, and there's a way to bring people in, and it's also about providing resources and showing people that this is a path that they can take. Like, I can personally say that nobody in my neighborhood thought they would become a game designer except for me growing up. So bringing that information back and also fostering programs to bring people into this industry, not into the abuse and the bull that we see, but the creation and the beauty and the amount of work that goes into making these games is also, just creating those teams is a bucket of work.
Yeah, and this is just the last kind of stat slide about, do people think there's a problem? This is from Pew Research Center. And unsurprisingly, black folks are more likely than whites to say video games portray minority groups poorly. I wonder why that is. Most games where I find black people, we are thugs, we are gangsters, we are, the enemy. We are the people that are getting shot. There's a reason I don't play a lot of shooting games, because people look like me. I'd rather not shoot myself. So I just thought it was an interesting bit of data. It's sort of relevant, it sort of isn't. But I just thought it was interesting that this question even came up, because when you try to bring up the issue of diversity and inclusion, a lot of people want to give you that, but games, it's just a game, it's fun. And I'm like, well, how is it fun for me to play games where I'm expected to kill people who look like me? Because games are still a medium. It is not simply I'm going to turn on the Xbox and go play for a few hours and not think about anything. For some people it is, but there is still a message and it stays with you. So that's something to think about too. All right, so what can we do? Because we're getting about a half hour and I do want to have time for questions. Remember, queue for questions.
Can I just add something first?
Sure.
I just thought of something that was weird, is that white men in the industry are so inescapable that even when I was working in Japan with a Japanese game studio, we had a token white guy. Like, I swear, you can't go, but we also had it, like, me. Yay! It was a very diverse team, otherwise.
Yeah. All right, so here's kind of the meat of the panel. And, read these, take a picture. I'm serious. Share it on Twitter. Please do so. share it with your friends that are gamers who don't think that this is an issue. Because the thing is, the industry is changing very slowly, but the people buying the games that, are tired of hearing and seeing stories that are the same white dude or in medieval England or the same RPG hero's journey over and over, until they speak up, this is not going to change, because marketing is going to go, well, people keep buying these games, clearly they want them.
Money
So-
talks.
Money talks, bullshit walks. That's what it is. So AJ or Alex, do you have any thoughts before I flip to the next slide, which is dev focused?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak on accessibility a bit, in that it's really disheartening to see people not only not be aware that playing games for people with disabilities playing games is sometimes so hard to do, but like last year I ran into a lot of people arguing with me, like just asking for remapping in games, and it's like, I'm a developer, I know how the program remapping, it's not difficult. So I definitely think that just getting gamers more information about diversity and accessibility is very important, because unfortunately there's people that will argue against literally everything, and we need to be prepared for that, I feel.
Yeah, but the reason why people don't want to talk to gamers is that whenever we do, we just, Gamergate. Like,
Enough said.
So it's kind of like the chicken and the egg thing, where, like, I agree with you, but also it shouldn't be on us to be here and say these things to other
Right.
people who look like us, And, like, how do we access that nice little, cocoon of white, able-bodied male cis privilege? How do I get in there and just crack it open? Just let all that privilege leak out and just make them listen.
You chuck Destiny
That got
hammers.
away from me.
All right.
Chuck Destiny hammers.
Are you okay?
2017 was a lot.
All right. Rochelle, anything before we move on? Or have we just totally borked the panel?
No. Okay. So I guess the other thing is, a lot of the times we end up making our own spaces, right? If there isn't something there, then somebody will just be like, well, why don't you just go make that? And then we do. And then, like, it turns into, well, basically
Gamergate.
most of this panel. But the thing that I said about diverse teams is also, like, if I didn't see a diverse team, I made one. At one point at a game jam, I was my team was the only team that had 4 women in it. Actually, we were all women. We also were the only women there, right? So there's a lot of room for improvement here, but just making sure that not only are these voices being heard, but are you uplifting them? Are you helping them get the word out? Like, it's, like Alex said, it's not on us to do all of this work. However, panels like this are the only way that I actually got into talking about things like this, and making sure there was awareness, and that when I'm making my games, I'm going, oh, well, does this work if somebody can't press A, right? Or, does this character have any agency? Why are they here, right? So it's also about just asking yourselves these questions and just going, is this what I want, right?
And also, just to know for the people of color in the room, sometimes the way to have these conversations is to be on panels like this, but then go, you know what, I can do other stuff. I program, I write, I do art, because I'm fortunate enough I'm at a point where I can talk about other things, but we wind up in a catch-22. Because on the one hand, people go, but I want to do better. Please help me, sacred brown person. Y'all laugh. I've had paraphrasing of that in emails, and often for free. But then it becomes, you are now the diversity token. You have painted yourself into a corner wittingly or unwittingly. So there's also emotional labor in that, because I get tired of having these conversations. I enjoy doing panels because I have my hour, I'm done, I can go get a beer when we're done, I'm done talking about this for now. But a lot of times when you are in a work situation or a Twitter conversation or a Facebook post, that you get pulled into because, hey, you're a black person who games, I'm going to ask your opinion. Pro tip, don't do that to your black friends because we will drag you. I have done it. It is very liberating. Because at a certain point, you're just like, clearly you have to know somebody beside me that you can tag in this damn post. So it's the catch-22. It's like, do I do that emotional labor? Do I not do that emotional labor? So for the non-people of color in the room, do some work. Find Google. It's your friend. Some people may scoff, but it's the truth. Because a lot of people don't even do that much. They want their hand held. They want to be spoon-fed data. They want to be spoon-fed answers. And then they do the cardinal sin of, but my black friend told me this is okay and this character isn't offensive and they don't mind. And I'm like, we are not a monolith. No marginalized group is a monolith. Write that down, put it on a sticker on your computer, save it in as a pinned tweet, email it to yourself. Because this happens a lot, and I know I'm going on a little bit of a tangent, but this is stuff that happens when we try to have these conversations, especially in a mixed group, be it a white friend who comes to me with a question, et cetera, or even a professional capacity, because I do diversity consulting as well, is we wind up in these situations where people want permission instead of doing the work. They go, well, I want to do a thing, I want to make this character, or I want to change a thing, and then I'm not sure if I should do it. Is it okay? And it's like, I can't speak for all black folks for you. I don't care how much money you want to pay me. And people are also afraid to fail. I don't know if you all have seen this as well, or they will fail and they'll go, well, I tried, people are mad at me, I'm never going to do this again, I'm just going to go back to my drawing board, my safe little corner, and never do it again, and that's not an answer either.
Or be a Nazi.
Alex,
I'm sorry.
you went from like 0 to 100.
I've seen that happen where it's
I've
like,
seen it too. I'm on Twitter.
I tried really hard to be
2017.
diverse.
2017, this is the mantra.
0 to Nazi. Not 100, 0 to Nazi.
That's the tag for the panel. Good night, folks.
There you go. Hashtag 0 to Nazi.
All right, so this next slide is for the devs in the room or people who make games. Again, listen to diverse voices. Bring these people to your table, though. It's not enough to go, I'm going to get a diversity consultant, I'm going to go tag someone on Twitter, whatever, or follow all the brown folks I can find in gaming. It is also that you need to bring folks to the table and hire them on your teams. I'm not going to read the whole list for you, but does anyone have anything else before I throw a resource slide up? And then we'll open for questions.
I wanted to add something up about transness as a trans person, perhaps the only trans person on this panel, and about queerness in general. Just everything that Tanya said about making your friend, whatever your marginalized friend, do the work for you. Same thing for trans people, especially under this administration where, I'm fairly cis-passing, so I have that privilege, so nobody really bothers me, but trans people are in danger. Like this is not just a conversation, much like a lot of people of color, immigrants here. If it's taxing to be alive under this administration, don't make them do extra work. Be thoughtful. Just think outside your marginalization, even as a marginalized person. That's what I wanted to add. Thanks.
Craig, I just read Craig's tweet. Sorry, AJ, do you have something to add?
Yeah, so I would also definitely add that anytime people, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Basically, we need accessibility to be more included in everything. Like, we need to talk, we need more people to talk about it. And even if you're a game developer right now, I think you need to reach out to other people with disabilities.
Okay, Rochelle.
On that note, I'm also an instructor at the Code Liberation, and accessibility is actually a part of our curriculum. If you are an educator and you're teaching somebody how to make their first game, that should also be part of their first lesson. How to either have your controls either be remapped or, just be mindful in what you're making and how you're making it. I started making games 3 years ago, and that wasn't part of my first interaction. There are I'm going to say several game jams going on at MAGFest. And even if you're not a part of them, if you're friends with someone who makes games or whatever, and you're like, hey, did you think about this angle at all? or just there's a lot of people talk about a chicken and egg problem, and it's really just like, where did you start? Did you start on, like, if it's on the scale from A to D, did you start at B? Because that's where everybody else starts. They start at B. A, literally just the basics, right? And sometimes that can be the best foundation. It's just, okay, did I learn the right way first? Or not even just like the right way, did I learn more ways, right? So as a dev, it's also about whether or not, making sure that your audience is more than just who you think is going to play your game. Because obviously you can't project who's gonna pick up your content, who's going to watch your YouTube videos or whatever it is. You're going to hit a certain point where you go, oh, I didn't even know someone who's different from me plays my game. So, like I said, it's about being mindful. It's about just really making sure that you know enough. And there's always something. There's always something in especially in accessibility, especially in web development in general. But trying to stick to games here. Just be mindful. Be mindful of how you develop. Be mindful of how you teach. And if you're an educator, definitely think about your curriculum and how that everything has a ripple effect. Is it going in the right direction is the question.
Awesome. All right, so that's a resource slide. Please feel free to take photos. Again, if anyone would like the whole deck, come up and give me your email and I can send it to you as a PDF once I get home from MAGFest. So we don't have a mic in the room. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and I will call on you. And again, a cue for question. If you start with comment, I'm going to ask you to sit down and think about your choice. You all think I'm joking. I had people test me at Gen Con. Please don't be that person. So hands slowly so I can try to get everyone. Yes, so right here in the hat. And
I have a question that I guess is a bit complex. It starts with a tiny story, if that's okay.
No.
Not okay?
You can give us your question, but just in the interest of time, I try to keep it to just questions. And we can chat after the panel as well.
That might be the best way for you to do that then.
Okay. Yes.
How can I improve literacy when it comes to talking about sexuality, diversity, race, disability? I find that many people just aren't there, and I don't want to use the language of elitism, but I feel like many people who look like me come to the topic, and they shouldn't even be in that room having that discussion. Is Xenoblade Chronicles sexist because they shake titties?
Well, one, don't use a lot of academic resources because academic resources are written in an elitist manner. And I say this, I worked in higher ed for 15 years. I can say this. Find articles, POV, opinion pieces that are from marginalized people. I keep a FAQ. I literally have let me Google that for you on the back of my phone. I will show you when we're done talking. Find those resources and point people at that and go, you go read this. Like one of my friends, she tells people, go read some Butler, go read some other things in terms of science fiction, and come back to me after you've had that discussion. Or just, I'm kind of an asshole. I'm going to be blunt with y'all. I've gotten to the point where I'm very tired of having those 001 conversations with people who think they're at a 300 level.
Right.
Point them at plainly written opinion pieces, articles. All the people I've listed here have a lot of great writing. Waypoint is doing a lot of great stuff right now about things. Go tell them, go read this. Go follow people who are talking about this, and maybe we can have a conversation, because the other thing, the elephant in the room that I didn't talk about is all of us have a marginalized identity. One of us is white. But the sad truth is, people don't listen to us. We're in this panel, there's a lot of lovely brown faces in here. Y'all know this shit, because we live it. However, we can put 4 white dudes on this panel, try to have the same conversation, and they will get lauded and given kudos and book deals and all other kind of shit because you're so woke, you're so aware. So use your privilege to that advantage, but don't come at it as a, look, I am beneficial white dude here to educate you, because you know when other people are not in the same place you are. So give them plain English, plain opinion pieces. That's my take on it. So quickly, anyone else have thoughts?
I would say also know when someone is not stupid, but actually trying to avoid the conversation. It's okay to give up. Your emotional energy is also important. Yeah, trans and people of color and all intersections are also people in the room. You know what I'm talking about. Sometimes just give up on that friend and save your sanity for that day. You don't have to save everyone, and maybe the consequence of losing friendships will shake them up and make them want to learn, because some people just don't want to.
Way in the back, in the kind of wine-colored shirt. Please stand and project.
So outside of the main character being white, what do you think is the biggest opportunity the gaming industry has to diversify the arena or the space?
Well, anyone else have thoughts before I start monopolizing the conversation? Well, I don't want, I'm supposed to be the moderator, not monopolizing the conversation.
She looks like she has a thought.
Okay, since Rochelle does not have a thought, at least not at this
Loading.
moment. What? Okay, so I think the biggest problem is, one, it's access to the industry. So for those that don't know, I Need Diverse Games and a bunch of other groups, we get 25 passes from the Game Developers Conference every year to pass out as whatever our purview is, whatever our process is. So it's access. It's also seeing more people like ourselves on panels, but not talking about Diversity 101, talking about programming, talking about AI, narrative design. I literally know the 4 probably black folks in narrative design in gaming right now. That's kind of shameful that I can name the 4 people off the top of my head and we all actually know each other. We should not literally know each other. The industry should be big enough where I can't name the few black folks off the top of my head or go to a list where all of us are posted. So it's access. It's also funding. Let's be real. A lot of Kickstarters that are primarily people of color, queer folks, don't make it. They don't get funded. They don't get the same exposure. And it's also just word of mouth and getting people who work at major sites to review these pieces and review these games. So it's access, it's money, it's getting the word out about it. And also shifting game culture in general. It's no secret I love Mafia 3. I love that game. I wrote about it. I made friends with some of the developers because I finally got to play a game where I got to play a black character and I got to have a revenge tale. It was a mafia story with a revenge tale, and I wasn't, you're not playing good dude. Let's not act like Lincoln Clay is a hero. But I don't get that narrative as a black character usually. That's why I fell in love with this game. So giving people stories that everyone else gets and not making a big deal out of it. Watch Dogs 2. Most of the people I know that are black folks in tech are like the dude in Watch Dogs 2. But no one tried to explain away why Marcus is the way he is. That's the character. So we shift the narrative to have characters of color do everything else and not have to jump through hoops and have reasons. Why is this character present? What, a smart black dude in Silicon Valley? I don't understand. So things like that, where we're shifting the narrative to not be the exception, but to just be part of the narrative landscape, if that makes sense. Okay. Y'all got real quiet. Did I just kill the room?
No.
Okay, I'm just checking.
You just
like,
dropped some
everyone
knowledge. That's what happened.
Everyone looks so serious and quiet. It kind of freaks me out when y'all do this. Yes, right here in front.
I apologize if I end up jumbling my words with this particular statement. Question, excuse me.
Because I was going to say.
Yeah, don't you think another major barrier for, I hate using this term, people of color, the alternative lifestyles, dare I say, disabilities, so on and so forth, is...
Not alternative lifestyle, but keep going.
Again, it was for the sake of clarification and whatnot, but yeah, that's kind of somewhat relevant. But upbringing, like growing up and whatnot, such as, I'm not sure about you guys, I was ridiculed by my grandma because I did not like going outside and playing sports. I like speedrunning in Banjo-Kazooie instead.
Um,
But, so those think that's another major barrier as to why you don't see a lot of,
I have thoughts, but I'm gonna let the panelists go first because I don't want to yell.
Yeah.
Can we summarize the question? Is that what
So
you're
the
saying?
question is, do we think another barrier to having more POC, LGBT, et cetera, could it possibly be upbringing? Because in the questioner's case, got ridiculed by his grandmother for liking games versus going outside and playing sports. So AKA, were we criticized and ridiculed for being nerds that like games, and does that affect you then wanting to go into the industry / getting into gaming?
Right. So, I mean, I understand why you would ask this question, especially being that this is, at this point, Mecca of nerds, right? I don't think anybody in this room would disagree with me.
I would ask you not to use Mecca.
You right. You right.
Thank you.
Sorry. But
See, it's just that easy. You can ask the question.
yeah. It's just like, okay, I definitely sidestep there. But at this point, you have to think about like, what do you like? What drives people, right? No matter what, you're gonna do what you want, right? In terms of, especially from what Tanya was talking about earlier about access, right? Did you know growing up that you can do this as a job? Was the resources available to you? Did you have people who were working in tech or building things around you? Like, was there a community, like, a computer class in your schools? Like, these are the things that I feel that actually really affect bringing people into this space. And I think we find a lot of community here because we come together and everybody, has a good spectrum of what they like here. And that's why we all come to MAGFest, that's why we all go to cons, and it's really sharing that love for these things. But on the professional standpoint and where you're starting, it's more like, do you have access? Was this an option for you? Or was it just like, okay, you could become a doctor, a lawyer, or someone who works as a city official or something like that, right? Was this something that was available to you? And not just like you, particularly as a person, but anyone, right? And a lot of the times you'll also find that a lot of game developers come into the game space because this is their creative outlet, just like someone who knits, just like someone who makes art in different capacities, obviously. I have opinions about games and art, but you have to think about whether or not, which angle you want this question to go. Because it can always just be like, well, yeah, I was teased as a kid, somebody stuffed me in a locker. But that didn't stop you from playing your games. Right, but...
I wanted to add to that specifically.
Yes.
Let's not confuse lived experience with persecution. Your
Yes.
grandma has internalized norms that the sexist system and patriarchy impose on men, which is where men have to be outside playing sports, doing manly things. That's on the patriarchy, not specifically, and that doesn't excuse her actions, but it's a system that we all live in and that brings us all down the same way that the system, like white supremacy and racism, brings us all down. So these are all symptoms of the same system. So the thing that you're talking about that put you down and maybe steered you away from games or made you doubt yourself is the same thing that's bringing us all down, but just divided into the micro level of one-on-one interactions. And that's unfortunate, but I don't know how to say this nicely. But I think there's a big nerd persecution complex in the nerd community, and I would really love to squash that, because nerds are not persecuted, at least not anymore. They're running the world pretty much. So even if you were persecuted and you put down by your grandma at that point, now once we finally get our space in these nerd spaces, you're on top. And there's nothing your grandma could have done about that. So I guess. I mean, she's angry. My grandma's angry.
Yeah,
That's just grandmas, I think.
And I'll just say this quickly so we can get to a couple more questions, because we have been given clearance to go a little bit over if we need to, seeing where we are in questions. Depending on the age, because when I was a kid, and I got no shame, I'm going to be 45 in April. It's not clean living, trust me. Being a nerd and geek was a terrible thing. I remember Revenge of the Nerds, things like that. I was teased because even though I was a student athlete, I still like to go home and play Nintendo and do other things. But at this point, being a nerd is so mainstream. I can go into Walmart, Walgreens, pick up Iron Man shirt, comics, whatever. So I think at this point, that not even persecution, that disagreement or not letting you play games, not letting you have access to games, could play a factor. But at a certain point, when you grow up and have your own disposable income, you can go do what you want. No one's stopping you from playing video games. And I know there's a lot of adults that I've met that are like, I realized as an adult I could get back into gaming and there's nothing shameful in it. So I think there's a renaissance coming of, even if your parents, grandparents, whoever raised you would not let you play games, no one's stopping you now, and we're rediscovering that joy. Look at how fast the Switch is selling. And we all have that nostalgia about Nintendo, most of us, so, they're capitalizing on that. So it could play a factor if we were having this conversation, I think maybe 10, 15 years ago. Not so much now, if that makes sense to you. Ponder that. We can talk more after the panel.
I'll sleep on it.
Okay, sleep on it. I'll give you my card. We can chat more. Yes, back there with bluish hair. Yes.
I'm raising my hand for her.
Okay, well, please don't put someone on the spot. Do you want to ask a question? Hi. Please stand up and.
Question about what intersection of gaming industry would best benefit the path towards more diverse gaming? Because I keep hearing this phrase, well, if you don't see diversity, make your own. And then you got industry, great, but what I want to know is, should there be more black writers, more black developers?
More black everybody.
Right, I get that part, but where in your opinion, which spot, more specific?
I don't think there's a best spot. I think we have to have a unilateral across the board, take over all this shit, and make our own is never an answer. And if someone tells you that, I'm gonna cuss, and I know it's getting recorded. Tell them to go fuck themselves.
Yep.
Or give you several $1 million in a staff. Because I get that answer all the time on Twitter, and I'm like, sure, I'll just go look in this bank deposit box of millions of dollars I didn't tell anybody I had. But we need to take over more spots, and also the C-level, the executive level, because a lot of teams that are making games are actually diverse, but it doesn't get past the person making that final decision. I'm a big Dragon Age nerd. No shock to anyone who talks to me for more than 5 minutes or follows me anywhere on social media. One instance is some of the character sketches that didn't make the final cut of the game. These characters were brown, they were amazing, they had dreadlocks. I would have actually liked Solus if he looked the way he looked in his concept art. And if you are a Solus fan, I'm not even sorry, because I'm tired of that fight. Look, I'm old, I don't have time for fandom fights no more. But black folks, marginalized folks, queer folks, and we need to have the space to be able to be out and be safe. I can't hide the fact that I'm black, no matter how loud I am. But my queerness is something that I can hide if I so choose. I should have that space to make the characters that I want. But, we need to be in all facets of game development, not just this one spot is best. But, if there's some black folks that got money, they can help lift up other people. And it's cyclical, because a lot of times the few black folks we see, and I'm being specific to the black folks in the room, we always see those same few black folks at every damn event. Everyone knows their name. They always get pointed out as the person you need to know. And they're doing a great job lifting other folks up, but you have to be out there, be in their face, be aggressive. And I'm going to say it. Go out there and be a bitch if you have to. Because somebody called me a bitch on Twitter, and I made an email address called HBIC at my domain, because that's how I am. But be yourself. Be out there. We need to all be out there. If you're in game development or a student, join the IGDA as a student. Join the Blacks in Gaming SIG. Go find the few black folks and go, look, Y'all got money and you have time, come talk to me. Come find me. I will take you around GDC and be like, look, you need to meet these people. And, ask for mentorship, ask for those people. Be out on Twitter like, look, I'm trying to get in the industry. There's not enough of me out here. Who can I talk to? So I will definitely give you my card when we're done.
Yeah, I guess to add on that, that's also how I got started. That's how I got to this table, right? I said 3 years. I didn't think I'd get to GDC in the first one. There's scholarships that are available, especially through the IGDA, and they will pay your flight, they will pay your room, and they will ship you around, show you, introduce you to everyone. We out here, right? I feel like that's most of what I do is just go, we out here. Like, and it sounds like it's very simple, right? But to see yourself in the space where you think you could be, that is probably one of the most powerful things. And I definitely would, I appreciate Tanya. Don't okay me. So the first time I went to GDC, like she said, there are people. It was just like, this is the person you need to know. But not only like is it just like, okay, well, I see another black person, I'm gonna talk to them. But we're also gonna be like, okay, so here are like all the Latino developers I know. Here are all the Middle Eastern developers I know.
Yeah, it's just me.
No, it's not. But I mean, anyway, there's a community here, right? It's not that big, but that's what we do. We lift each other up and we support each other. And like a lot of what we said is just money talks, but it's also time. And it's also giving someone else the time of day. And when you get there, when you get up on that stage, make sure you lifted somebody else up with you.
Okay, we do have a little bit more time. All right, so you in the front, and then you way in the back. So you first.
So, question is character creation in video games
No.
a cop-out for
Yes.
diversity? And then follow up, when white people play people of color in video games, when they create the character, is that digital blackface or appropriation?
I'm sorry, my
That's
eyes
a
started
deep cut.
twitching. The first answer is yes, it is a cop-out, and I actually gave a talk about that. Because giving me a palette in the game does nothing narratively to recognize the fact that I've made a brown character or character from a certain country means nothing. I'm literally the same character, and as much as I love Dragon Age Inquisition, made some very good-looking Inquisitors, nobody gave a damn that I was brown. They cared that I was a mage, that I was a rogue, that I was human, but it meant nothing in the end. Same character, same path played out. The second part of your question is one that is, it's in the scope of this, but I know that I could probably talk for several hours alone on that subject. I feel a way about it because it's situational, and let's chat more after the panel. But I do want to find out, Rochelle or Alex or AJ, if you have thoughts on the character creation of portion of his question. Or have I just murdered the panel?
No, I mean, I think you do pretty great.
Yeah.
I talked a lot.
Yeah, it was good.
Okay. All right then. Okay.
I'm
I
trying
don't
my
know.
best not to laugh on the mic, and
You can
it's
laugh.
just
I'm laughing because if I don't laugh, I'm gonna just crawl under this table in shame. But the digital blackface question is, briefly, I've talked about it in terms specifically about Dragon Age and a few other properties where black fans and fans of color who make characters and do derivative fan works, fan art, etc., they get hassled, or people will whitewash characters, things like that. Someone I follow had a fan art commission of their Inquisitor, lovely dark-skinned Inquisitor, and they romanced Cullen, who white pasty dude, unfortunately, in Inquisition. I didn't know what happened to him beside Lyrium. And within a few reblogs, somebody called him a chocolate vanilla swirl. Yeah. But then you have the opposite effect of white fans making characters of color and getting a lot of kudos, getting a lot of their art gets reblogged more, their fanfic gets shared more. But then they'll do, but I made a black character. I understand your suffering. Why are you making fandom about race? And I'm just like, okay. We're just going to ignore the fact that you have created this weird, like, what you think is an homage to people of color because you think we're pretty and food words, et cetera. But it's a very interesting discussion. I'll actually send you a post I just wrote about that for the tabletop side of things, because that has come up as well. But in the back, are they still?
Can I just add something?
Yeah.
Just real quick about character creation.
Yes.
It's all about the marketing. That's when I'll decide if it's a cop-out or not. For example, one of my favorite games ever, Destiny. Love that game. On the front and center, the Titan is a Chad. Just a nondescript, army-looking white dude. I don't even fucking know. And I've never seen anyone play a white Titan.
Well, you don't see yourself, so.
No, I see all my
Oh, yeah, you
friends.
do.
They have good fashion. Anyways.
Get them shaders.
Yes. Yes.
I came in a little late, so I don't know. It seems like a lot of the panels directed towards people that are in the industry, critics, and developers. What can I, as a consumer, do to help in this? Because I know I came in late, so okay, what can I do? Okay, so I'll take a picture of that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, in the red, and then I'll get you in the red. So first in the red, yes.
So my question's for AJ, actually. When so many AAA games are focused on like a power fantasy, how can we include a protagonist with disabilities? A sense of.
So I would really like to see, at least out first, because I'd have to know the genre, there's a lot of things with that. I would just like to see more experimentation in the space. I feel like some people might be really afraid to just try whatever power fantasy for someone with a disability to be like the main character in the game. They're afraid to make that. And I just want to say, make it. Like, as long as it comes from a place of love and you try to consult with people and obviously compensate them for their time with your game, or if it's a game jam, just try to do whatever's on your mind. I just want to see more examples of it. And then I think we can start narrowing it down. We can start figuring out what's the best way, maybe, or a great way to include people with disabilities and narratives and stuff. But ultimately, I would say I would almost, I have nothing really. So I would go, I would just be so excited to hear whatever you're thinking of right now and to try it.
Well, we were talking about Wolfenstein, like you said, and they shooting a gun with a single arm.
Yeah.
Obviously unrealistic, but it's a power fantasy, right? So is it? Why? I don't understand exactly why that's bad. If he's like somehow the superpowers.
Right. Well, for me, I think it's there's another game, The Surge, that hasn't popped up here tonight. But the reason I personally am not too big of a fan of either of those instances is though being in a wheelchair is portrayed as like a massive problem in the game, and in both games, minor spoilers, but you should know, they get fixed. Like, they're not in a wheelchair anymore a couple hours in, and that's what I particularly don't like. Wolfenstein's so unrealistic to me in like a million ways, like the original and everything else. I don't really, I mean, I can get by that, the impossible physics, but I really didn't like that they fixed the problem and he solved this problem by just not being disabled anymore. That's not really cool with me.
Hey, I was really interested in the response that you had to the character creation. The fact that you can pick how what your character looks like,
Mhm.
but it doesn't actually change how people react to you or
Mhm.
characters react to you in the game. So when we're creating characters that are diverse, how is it that we navigate them being represented, but that not being their defining feature? There has to be a reaction to what they are.
So for me, that reaction is because of the character creator question specifically, because I get that pushback a lot, and not that you were pushing back. I understood the question, But I get that pushback a lot of, but character creators, you can make a character that's brown. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck. The game doesn't recognize that I'm brown. But in a game, let's say like The Witcher, where you give me the character, they are not like carbon cutout white dude. And if the game narrative recognizes it, great. But it's not the same as going, I must make a problem for this character because they are brown and racism, etc. You know, Mafia being the exception, because if you took the racism out of 1968 Louisiana, you wouldn't have much of an experience. And the game does warn you, and I have a warning when I share this game. So there's a difference between the character creator and giving you this palette and making a nice-looking character, but the game world not recognizing. And it could be as simple as, oh, maybe you're Antivan in the case of Dragon Age, because that's where all the brown people seem to come from in this world. Or, you know, having it be the game reacts to me as a mage in one specific scene, or as a Canary, or as a dwarf, or whatever, but then it's not recognized anywhere else. So for me, that was an immersion-breaking thing of, why is it I go to this one particular spot, this one particular thing, and now the game's like, oh, by the way, we're going to mistreat you because you're a human mage, but not any other time in the game. So for me, it's like, okay, I get to make this, you know, good-looking character, but narratively, there's no response from the world, so it's like I'm literally playing the same person no matter how many times I play this game. So there's a difference between giving me a character that is of color, that is fully realized, depending on your setting, because everything's different. There's going to be games where injecting racism, real-world issues, etc., makes zero sense narratively, versus a game like Mafia, where you are telling a story, you are injecting real-world history and events, and to just totally whitewash and cut out any instance of racism with a black dude walking around in 68 Louisiana, especially in rich white areas, and not have the game react that way, there's a difference. So for me, it all comes down to the narrative and the story being told.
Yeah, can I also say there's space for both? Like sometimes I want to be a brown person in a game and walk around with my curly hair and just have some fun and have everyone treat me like I was just anyone else and not comment on anything. There's space for that. There's escapism in that. But also when you're trying to tell a story that centers on characters and narrative, like Tanya said, you can't ignore those differences, especially if you're doing the goddamn fantasy racism shit. The whole like, oh, everybody hates these elves, dark elves injected with the darkness of, and we see that so much in tabletop RPG.
Yeah.
And it is boring.
There's also the correlation that if someone is dark, they are evil, right? That is overdone. It's overdone, and it's also very, you're setting up your narrative to be like any, like, you know, light correlates to good, dark correlates to evil, and at that intersection there, you end up with I don't know, every hero's journey monolith you've ever seen. It's like Star Wars. It's like it's a whole book there. So maybe also think about different ways to approach that, and it's not just like maybe like race, like races versus races, or orcs versus elves or something like that. There's more complexity there, and once you kind of remove the things that we've all been kind of taught by regular media and go your own path, you might actually find something interesting there within your narrative that speaks to your character and whatever situation they are in, and that gives them agency as well.
Okay, in the purple shirt, and unfortunately that will have to be our last question, but we'll hang around for a couple minutes before we need to make space for the next panel.
Okay, just makes a good closing question, because several talks were mentioned outside of the one that is happening right now. Are those available online, and if so, where can they be found?
For me,
I'm pretty sure you're the only person you mentioned, but
your Gate GX3 is on the YouTube, yeah?
I don't think so. I think my talk is one of the only ones that wasn't recorded.
Okay, we'll figure it out. But Alex, you have at least the presentation.
I do.
Okay. So come get our info after. For me, the talk I gave about character creation was at GamerX Australia this year, and it is on the GamerX Australia YouTube, so GX Australia is YouTube. I podcast, so I talk a lot about this on the internet. So Spawn on Me is a podcast I joined. Fresh Out of Tokens is a podcast I did for a couple years, and all those are still archived at fresh out of tokens.simplecast. Michelle, are any of your talks archived?
Not my talks, but my podcast is definitely still up. That's games, seriously, at gameseriously.com. And we're basically a foursome of gamers talking about why games are important and why these conversations are important to keep having. Yes.
AJ, is any of your research or any talks you've given online?
Yes, so I have talks on YouTube. I have a blog post on my Tumblr, and they're not like compiled together anywhere yet. I'm going to work on that like right now, thank you. But just tweet at me, like get my info, and I can send you everything. I know where everything's at. It's just not.
Yeah, I was also
organized.
going to say that this panel is being recorded. So if you like come back to it later and you go, oh, well, I have a question, we all have like Twitters and
Yeah.
definitely.
Except me, don't at me. No, I'm just kidding. You can at me.
All right, so quickly, let's give our Twitters, and then we will call it until we get kicked out for the next panel.
All right. My name is Rochelle Basilay. I am at popular_pixels on Twitter. Yeah, you can at me.
Tanya DePass. So I am CypherTier literally everywhere except my Square Enix account. Don't ask. It's so embarrassing. They won't let you change it for money. CYPHEROFTYR. That is CypherTier, like the Norse god.
Every time you say this, I'm surprised at where it comes from. I'm Alex. You can find me on Twitter most of the time at Skull de la Creme. Skull, SKULL, de la Creme, DELACREME. I know. Why did I choose that handle?
It's a good handle.
So yeah, you can follow me if you have any questions. Just at me and say specifically, I was at your panel, blah, 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 and then we can just talk about it or email about it or whatever. I don't like having these discussions in public simply because people are dicks, especially on Twitter, and you'll always have some asshole jump in being like, oh, well, here's my opinion nobody asked about. And you're like, well, nobody asked you. So yeah, so I prefer that we email. So just at me and be like, I want to have this conversation, and I'll just give you my email or like my website, or we can just keep talking.
And I'm at only use me feet on Twitter because I play video games with my feet. Not sure if I said that, but I do. So, and I'm always up for a chat on Twitter. If you Google that, you can find me like everywhere though, Reddit, YouTube, whatever. And yeah, always up for a chat about accessibility or anything mentioned here.
Thank you all for spending part of your night with us.
Thank you.